it's just me and you. Head on down to the fishing hole. Grab your hat, get your pole. Let's go fishing when you're in the mood.
Canadian Sportfishing has been brought to you in part by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922. Bait to Go, the most versatile and portable bait container for anglers.
I love springtime. The air is fresh, the trees are starting to bud and those leaves are coming out. I'm even seeing some blossoms. Everything is turning green, and I can get my boat in the water and pursue those fish that I've been waiting to catch all winter long. One of my favorite fish to target, especially in the springtime when the water's still cold, is the northern pike. This is the time when they finish spawning and they move out from the shallow water area and they start swimming and dispersing on flats, but they stay there a little bit before they go out in that deeper water. And they're real fun to catch using twitch baits and jigs because the water is clear and sometimes you can actually spot them. Oh, that one hit right near the boat. There's just something about this early season fishing. The only thing is, today we've got such a windy day. Normally you don't just lift pike into the boat like that, but this guy isn't that big. Perfect little northern, nice camouflage stripes all down the sides. This guy isn't big, but boy, did he hit hard. Okay, it's not gonna take long to go because this water's so cold. Once I find an area where I know there's a concentration of fish, but I'm not catching one after the other, oftentimes I'll drop in a bait cloud ball, especially if the water's calmer. That bait cloud ball, as it drops, releases air bubbles and also bioflake that's gone that same day, but it looks like fish scales coming off a fish. Because pike have really good vision, they see that column of bubbles coming up, they also see the scales, and when they get close, they actually smell that cloud because it's impregnated with different scents, like blood scents and also fish oils. The bait cloud takes about 15 seconds to dissolve the actual air, but once it releases that oil, it lingers around for about half an hour. And that means that those fish are going to be drawn into that scent, and a lot of times it actually triggers them into striking. What I hit. You know, when they hit these twitch baits, it's awesome. I'm trying to work this, you know, with the wind on my back. I mean, that wind is so cold on my face. You can see, look at this guy, all the weeds. And, you know, these guys are little tykes, but they're still a lot of fun to get. They've got tons of teeth on the roof of their mouth. You can see them. It's almost like a nail pad up there. So I like these guys because they're so aggressive. You know, I like their attitude. All right, little northern, are you gonna splash? He wants to go. Oh, I love the energy that they have this time of the year when they take off like that.
Closed captioning is brought to you by MD Marine Insurance. Boat insurance made easy.
In the springtime, the water is cold and very clear because there's no algae blooms. The key, though, is to find isolated chunks of vegetation or new aquatic vegetation that's just growing off the bottom. And if the water's clear, you can actually spot some of the darker patches, which is the new weed growth. But if you're in about 10, 12 feet of water, it's very hard to see. The only way you can see that is on your fish finder and using your hydrographic chart to locate where the breaks are. In the springtime, the weather can be really unstable, and it's very common to have strong winds, even though the temperatures are starting to rise. So one of the things I have to consider when I'm looking for pike, especially in very large lakes, is windage. I want to be able to cast properly, and that means using my electric trolling motor and not having too much wind. So besides looking in the water to look for the things that attract fish, I also look at the landscape. And I looked for high terrain areas, especially in the back of bays, because I know I'm going to be a little bit more sheltered. If there's a creek or a river that comes into that bay, I'll also try to work my way to it, because those are real hot spots that pike will move in and out, and especially come out if they've been spawning in there earlier. Okay. You know what's happening? I'm getting these hits. Oh, this fish just came out of the water. Now this is interesting. You know, this is about the third fish that, look, it actually hits head first, and then the front treble comes out, and the other ones tack onto their body. That's how aggressive these fish are. Wow, is that wind ever blowing? This is making for very challenging fishing conditions. Now this guy's gonna be a flying fish. I'm just gonna drop him over the side. There he goes. Shallow bays and river mouths also mean warmer water temperatures. That means accelerated weed growth, and a lot of times there will be a little bit of algae and the water will be discolored. I find that if you can fish the actual mix of water where the murky water is meeting the clear water, those are some key areas where the pike will mull around and stay there for a little bit longer. When it comes to looking for spring pike, sometimes you can cover a lot of water, because especially when you're on a flat, there's only certain areas that will attract the fish. So what I'm doing here, I'm using my chart. See how I've seen the isolated weeds? Look at that I'm coming on. I'm gonna slow down. This is where it's very important to use the chart with the sea maps, because the sea map is showing me on the hydrographic chart where the shallow flat is starting. And look, on the actual sonar, I'm actually gonna mark that. I'm gonna take a screen grab, because that's a good example of the vegetation that's growing sporadically. You know, this is actually non-stop action. It's just very severe conditions. Now, normally I would use a net, but because these guys are smaller, I'm just grabbing them like that. I love these mottlings, like on the base of the anal fin right there and on the tail. I just think they're beautiful. You can just picture them when they're sitting in the vegetation or laid down there in that vegetation. They're like invisible. They just blend in with their surroundings. Are you gonna take off again? These guys have all given me that big splash, just like that. Pike have excellent vision, and in fact, their eyes are located on top of their head, so not only can they see ahead, but they can cross their vision to form binocular vision. And in the springtime, when the water's clear, they can see really well. So the type of presentation you use is very important. Number one, you have to get your bait to go down to the level of the fish, because they'll seldom in cold water come up closer to the surface. And two, you have to use a presentation that looks like a wounded minnow. That feels good. You gotta keep the pressure on. Oh, nice fish. Now, I've got the drag pretty tight, so what I'm doing, I actually hit the release button, and sometimes I'll use my hand. Look at the stripes on this fish. What a nice pike. Okay, there we go. We're getting a little bit bigger. Isn't that a gorgeous fish? I'm getting dripped on it, but that's okay. I think they're such beautiful creatures. But you gotta use that twitching presentation to get them to hit. They can be very lethargic when that water's cold. Okay, fella, you're gonna be released. He's giving me a workout. Can you believe how much energy these fish have? You know, I find that fishing early in the year when the water's cold and the fish are lethargic, using natural colored lures produces some of the best fishing action. Look at how natural this husky jerk looks. If I turn it back and forth, You can see it's literally transparent. You can actually see where the little beads are that help to weigh it down right, and also that gives it that rattle when it's going through the water. This is the lure that I hooked all of my fish on. Now, some of the other colors that are very natural in the same series, here's another glass one that's got more of a blue sheen, and then this one is more of like a bait fish or a sucker color. So you can see all these three are a very natural color. They all have the same action. All these lures are 14 centimeters long, which seems to be the ideal size, not just for casting and retrieving, but also for diving. If you're using a braided line, if you're twitching continuously and keeping a tight line, these lures will actually go down to about 8 or 10 feet, which is excellent when those pike are holding close to the bottom. Now, these are some of the other colors that are here. The perch is one of my favorite, and you can see it's got the stripes like a perch. This is the one that looks like a small pike. You know, a larger pike won't think twice about nailing a smaller pike to feed on. And then, of course, this is the silver. It's almost like a pearl finish with like a blue back. This looks like a Cisco, or it could be a smelt, which is ideal when you're fishing in cold, clear water. This gold one with the black back would work ideal if it was overcast out. But today it's not overcast. We've had some clouds, but it's been really bright. So the only thing I would suggest is that no matter which color you're using, that you use a medium heavy action rod, not too flimsy of a rod, because you want to be able to really control and snap that rod to get that lure to go back and forth. It also helps to use a braided line. So I'm using that Suffix 832. So not only does there's no stretch, so you really get good reaction from the lure, but also when a pike hits, all you got to do is ease back and you get a really good hook set. So these are some of the best lures to use when you're fishing early in the year, the water's cold, and those pike are lethargic. My first choice in cold water pike fishing presentation is to use a hard body bait and to twitch it. What I like to do is to make a long cast with a lighter braided line so that it reaches its maximum diving depth, and I continuously twitch it and reel at the same time. I get that body bait to go down about 6 to 8 feet, which is very close to the bottom. And often, as soon as a pike hits it, it'll actually grab weeds with it, so I'm fighting the fish and the weeds. Usually that's not a problem. But the key in the springtime is to get those twitch baits to go down to the level of the fish. If I'm fishing a bright sunny day, the water's shallow and clear, those pike can often shut down around 10 to 12 o'clock when that sunlight is really intensive into the water. That's when I have to switch from using my twitch baits to using jigs and plastic swim baits along the bottom. I fish them the way I would for walleye, but I try not to use any terminal tackle like snaps or snap swivels. When I'm using a swim bait on a jig, the type of knot that I use when I'm making my fluorocarbon knot is very important. I like to use a Rapala knot because it actually creates a loop where the actual eye of the jig head is, so that it enables that swim bait to swim freely. It doesn't go necessarily to one side or the other. So very important, if you're using a hook or a lure that doesn't have a split ring and you need to have some action, don't tie a tight knot. Besides using hard baits like a husky jerk, when the pike are down a little bit deeper and they don't really want to come up even for the husky jerk, I find that using jigs and plastic grubs work really well. The ones that I use look like a minnow or a bait fish. The one that I'm holding up here is made by Lunker City, and it's called a swim fish. And it's very interesting because their original lure, the finesse fish, is this one that had a straight tail. You can see there's no paddle tail. And this is the swim fish. So it's the same body, very slender body, but it has that paddle tail. So when the water hits it, it goes back and forth, whether you're lifting it through the water or letting it drop down. When I'm fishing clear water, like early in the year for northern pike, I like to use natural colors. So you can see all these three colors are very natural, whether it's like an off brown for like a mud minnow, or more of a shiner color, or an alewife color like this one. Also take notice that this particular jig head looks like the head of a minnow. This is the Lunker City painted jig heads, and you can see that they're on a pretty serious hook. That's an actual tournament hook that's on there. So it's got a big gap. Now, this is what they look like in the package. That's the actual painted heads, and this is the one that's just the lead. Now, look at the grub barb. See how they're like little discs? Once you take the plastic grub and you put it on that grub barb, there's no way it's going to come off. So that's one thing I really like about their jigs. You can see that they're really on there to stay well. You know, we actually ducked in and went into this marina basin because that wind is so strong out there. And I put on a jig, and look at that nice sized pike that I've got on. I love those models on the back. And you know what? He just inhaled that swim fish. I don't see it. So I'm gonna wait to see, because he's head shaking, if he's done his head shakes, because I gotta grab this guy. I've got a light leader on, just a fluorocarbon leader, so I've got to be very careful. Look at his head. Yeah, he's not very happy at all. Gorgeous colors. You can appreciate how clear this water is. Okay, I'm just going to get down and, okay, I could use a net, but you know what? I'm just going to use my hand. Look, he just swallowed that jig. Can you see that jig, how far down it is in its mouth? Man, okay. I think I definitely need the pliers. What do you think? Now, I've got some tools here, so this is actually going to help. So look what I'm going to do here. I've got a spreader, because I want his mouth to stay open. This is where having the right tools is really important. I don't want to hurt him. You can see that it's hooked just in the roof of the mouth. So I'm going to just pop it out backwards, just like that. There, it didn't hurt him. And now I'm going to release that. And I'm going to take my gripper, which I have here. And I'm actually going to use the gripper to hold it by the lower jaw. And I'm going to open these. And you know what? Watch. Bye, Mr. Pike. There. Now, look at how effective this jig is. You know, I mentioned earlier that you have to feel your fluorocarbon leader. You can probably see where that's been nicked there a couple of places. So the right thing to do when that happens, definitely nicked. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to retie it. Because I don't want, if I get a big one on, I don't want it to get, so you can see where the nick is right there. So that nick can actually lose the fish. So what I'm going to do is cut my line just above it, and then I'm going to retie. I still have enough fluorocarbon leader. The reason I use the fluorocarbon is because it's clear. What I'm going to do is just make a loop. Because there is no swivel on the jig, I want to have a loose knot, and I'll show you what I mean by a loose knot. So I'm putting that through. See where I made that little loop? I'm going to pass the line through it, and you'll see what happens here, because I want this the jig, swim fish, to really swim naturally. So this is actually called a rapella knot, and I'm going to just pass it through the loop, tighten it, okay, and I'm going to trim this tag, and I'll show you what I mean by a loop knot or a loose knot. Let me just trim this. Now, see what I mean? See how this is nice and loose? It can just play. So that jig can free fall and fall any way it wants, and it's going to have really good action. Nice northern. Now I just got to figure out how to get him. He's got that hook on the outside of his mouth. So I got to get in the right position here. And come on. I don't know if he's going to head shake again. Oh, look at that. Isn't that a nice northern? Okay, got that one out. That one out. And let me just hold him for you in the water so you can see how beautiful he is. I'm going to extend him out, but you know, that's a really healthy fish, and there's no way I can hold on to him. Now look at this nice image that we have on our contour map. This is a nice flat, it's about 7-8 feet deep. But watch what happens when I touch the screen. This is a Raymarine hybrid touch. When I hold and touch the screen, you'll see another menu bar come up, and on there I've got a bunch of choices. I've got place waypoint, chart objects, find nearest. I'm going to click on find nearest, And look at what all the different things that come up, waypoints, port services. I'm going to push on ports to see where the closest ports are. So here's where I've got Niagara-on-the-Lake Sailing Club with the coordinates. I've got the Youngstown Yacht Club. I've got the Williams Marine. I have the Lewiston Marina. If I wanted to go to any of these, all I have to do is push on the waypoints, and that'll take me exactly to where I need to go. So this is one of the nice features about the sea maps that's part of the Raymarine Hybrid Touch system. Those are the cards that I've got in there. Not only does it give me the fishing information, the contour lines, the structure, but valuable information like what ports I can go to that are closest to me. And that can all make my day a little bit better. What a nice northern. It's nice when you can see them in this clear water. Look at that fish take off line. You know what? They're getting a little heavier. Let me just stand up here so I can show you this fish. And I'm going to grab the pliers at the same time. There's a nice spring northern. Gorgeous, healthy fish from cold water. Just nailed that husky jerk. You know, it's so exciting. Just before I hooked this fish, I saw one follow and come up, opened its mouth. I set the hook and I pulled the husky jerk away from it because you get so excited. There's a spreader right there. Yes, he's not hooked too bad. I'm not going to hurt him. He's hooked right there. Look at that. Really nice spring northern. That fish is probably about 7-8 pounds. Just prime fish. Gorgeous colors. And even though the water's cold, they're just nailing those husky jerks. And just going to extend them out. Very important, even in this cold water, to let them get their energy back. I just love that. Look at that metallic look. Just gorgeous looking fish with those nice chain markings on the back. Okay, and he's ready to go. Nice northern. There he goes. Beautiful. Oh, he took off like a bullet.
Canadian Sport Fishing has been brought to you in part by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922. Bait to Go, the most versatile and portable bait container for anglers.
You know, every time I hook a fish, even if it's a small pike, I always make sure to check the trebles, especially when you've got a lure that has 3 of them on there and they're pretty light wire. So what I'm seeing is that a couple of them are a little open. So when I say a little open, you want to have that nice bend in the hook. So I take my pliers and just bend them back in. Because pike are notorious for thrashing once you hook them. So you have to make sure that all those hooks are nice and straight, and also that you check the leader.